Welcome to the People's Representative with Nima Flubes, Member of Parliament.
My viewers, and a blessed good morning to my comrade, Maureen Philadelphia, Member of Parliament, who will be on the show with me this morning. Good morning, Maureen.
Good morning, Comrade Flubes, and good morning to your viewership. It's nice to be here once again.
Thank you so much. So this morning, I want to encourage those who are on the live to share the live and encourage others to tune in as we continue to talk about so many things that are happening in and around our country. You know, this week we would have celebrated International Women's Day. So we have some talk on that this morning. And like I said, just share the live. It's a privilege to be awake, to be alive, to be alert, so that we can continue to empower and encourage each other, even as we continue to live in this beautiful land of ours. I want to start by using my quote this morning. You know, every time I begin my show, I have a quote that I would use. And so this morning I have a quote from Maya Angelou, and the operator is going to put it up on screen. And after I share the quote, we're going to talk a little about this. She says, each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she stands up for all women. I want us to ponder on those words this morning. Each time a woman stands up for herself without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she stands up for all women. Comrade Philadelphia, could you share your thought on this quote this morning?
Sure, Madam MP. Each time a woman stands up without knowing she is standing up for all women, that in itself can mean several things. However, there's time when one wants to believe it's none of my business. Why do I get involved? But then we need to lend voice to the voiceless. We need to lend an ear to those persons who expect us to do on their behalf, who expect us to represent them where they cannot represent themselves. And so whenever you stand up and you represent and you make your voice be heard, you make your representation be known, you representing a girl, a mother, a sister, a grandmother, all right, an aunt, and all other women that cannot stand up and represent themselves. And so I take my role as a female member of parliament, as a female activist, as a female teacher, very, very important, because I understand that we have to stand up for each other, regardless of the situation, wherever, whenever, and however. We need to lend our voices. We need to let our representation be seen. We need to do what has to be done. And so that is my contribution to the specific question you asked this morning.
Thank you so much. And indeed, we have benefited from women standing up in the past for different causes. We're able to vote. We're able to work. We're not just seen as a homemaker, but we are professionals in our field. And yes, the quote speaks to that when you stand up, you may not be consciously saying that I'm standing up to represent Sarah or Maureen, or I'm representing Natasha or all of that. But you're standing up for some cause. And when you stand up for that cause, it represents other women are able to benefit from it. And we want to encourage our women, you know, that we will continue to stand in support of them, with them, regardless of whatever is happening. And I want to encourage them to use their voices to speak out and speak up against situations that continue to affect them. There was a press statement given by our party, the PNCR, and they talk about the different things that women face, different biases that women face, be it unemployment, be it discrimination, abuse, sexual harassment, gender bias in seeking to earn a living. And when you move around this country and you interact with people and you observe persons in communities, you recognize that a lot of these biases continue to exist, and women have to find alternative means of dealing with them. Also, we know in the pandemic, we would have seen great strength shown by our women because they would have had to adjust to dealing with the kids being at home full time. They would have had to adjust to finding more food, but yet still the income would not have increased. The women would have had to be creative in coming up with ways to stretch a dollar, as the older folks would say, so that they can adequately provide for their families. And so this morning, again, we want to continue to speak out. We as women must also support one another. um, Women must not allow the differences across politics, religion, your social status, your occupation, and your ethnicity to blind us or to affect us from sharing challenges and giving hope and helping our other women folk to reach forward. So the quote by Maya Angelou is very pertinent at this time to remind us that we would stand up, not knowing that we are standing up for others. All right. I'm supposed to have two women. I don't know if they're on as yet, but I'm expecting two women to come on so that we can talk about an ongoing issue um, that continues to affect not only the women but families at Cane View. I don't know, Comrade Philip, if you can recall when we had our parliamentary debate and questioning the Minister Kroll would have stood up and talk about the Cane squatters and having them relocated and compensated for properties. But the amazing thing about this particular situation, a meeting was held. One thing was said to the residents at Caneview about what is happening. Operator, could you put up the photos from Caneview with the houses so that persons can get a visual picture of what I'm speaking of? Um, You have the Minister of Housing went. He told them that he would interact with the people. They would have follow-up meetings and all of that to deal with these people because they claim that the construction of the four-lane highway would have affected these people. But we recognize that as work are ongoing, that the road is not actually passing in the said area where these people are located. Thank you, operator. It is actually the road is behind those buildings, but all of those buildings that you see there in the photo is will be destroyed. All of them, they intend to destroy. But the people, some persons there continue to stand up because the question is why would you want to disenfranchise persons who would have settled and established their livelihood in a particular area for over 29 years, and then with all the claim that you're compensating them. In this compensation of this household, Comrade Philadelphia, these persons were told that they will have documentation for the areas in which they will go to live. They were told that um, they will be given the relevant utilities, light, water, and all of that so that they can be comfortable. But I can tell you on the ground, it's a whole different story. As usual, when you're dealing with this administration that continues to thrive on lies and peddle mischief when it comes to our people. When you get on the ground, it's a whole different thing. I was told yesterday that persons were called to pay some kinds of money to get documentation. And could you imagine the distress that these women and the families are going through at this time? And the question is, how can you compensate families for persons who would have established, have their farms, establish their livelihood in a particular area? You're going to relocate them. What compensation can you actually give a person for a tree that they will see bearing all the time and reaping from it and benefiting from it? What compensation can you give a seller who would have probably got her little stall or stand selling or stuff to help the people? The question is, what can you really give them? And so, come on, Philadelphia, could you tell me in your mind, how do you think these people could actually be compensated for such a situation? I mean, from a woman's perspective, what are some of the things that you think will go through your mind if someone should just come and decide to uproot you from your home of comfort?
You know, MP Best, I thought that I ponder on while you spoke is transition and adaptation. And those two words are very important, especially when we have children that will be affected by whatever decision those in authority made. When you take the family from an area where they have already accustomed to and would have settled in, they would have adapted to the cultures and tradition of that specific community, more so depending on their livelihood. If it's a self-employed person, persons in the area understand that I go here to the shop to purchase, and that shop owner, that resident, would have already established herself as a businesswoman. And so economic prospects is there where finance is coming in to take care of the family. But when you're going to remove her, the family, from that area to take them to another community that is not yet developed, transition come into place there. Is the transition, will the transition be smooth? How the babies are going to adapt to the changes in that area? Then you're saying that they're going to provide uh, utility, water, telephone, light, and all of these kind of things. And that in itself will affect the mind, knowing that I have to go to school tomorrow. When I was living at Plantation X, my time for waking up in the morning is 7. But now that I'm living at Plantation Y, I have to get up at 5 because I have to get the bus to go. Then I may have to go to another area to fetch water. All right. I don't have electricity. I have to use lamp. And so it reminds me of the calypso that said, back in time, back to basic. While they may say that they're going to provide for, have they taken all of these into consideration? That child may have to take CXC this year. That child may have to take National Grade 6 this year. And that transition from the area where I was here, I could have, but now I have to get home at X time. I have to use lamp to study. I have to go to bed earlier because I have to adjust myself to the present situation and all of this. And so, as a woman, all of these things were not taken into consideration, I believe. Now, as you rightfully say, MP Bess, the road will be cut, not where these houses are located. So these families will not be directly affected by a road being put there. I am thinking beyond that. Why would you want to dislocate, dislodge, or make me uncomfortable when I would have established myself here for 40 years and beyond? On the other hand, you say that you're going to compensate me. Have you taken time out to understand there's a fruit bearing tree here that will give me $85,000 a year, or it will give me $250,000 a year? Have you taken time out to understand if it will take 2 years for me to get myself up back? I have 10 fruit trees as a cost of $250,000 per year. Have you done all of this so as to adequately compensate me from moving to that area you want me to? And so while policymakers would want to make decisions based on those policies they set, more than often they do not take time out to think about the most valuable resources, which is our
It's
human, which
yeah.
our people, all right, the citizens of the country. I can remember Maya Motley, the Honorable, said that no citizen should be tenants in their own land. And this again reminds me of that statement. And I end here.
Thank you. And yes, Comrade Philadelphia, as you were saying, it's amazing how people think that the authorities think that they can actually compensate people for the years a person would have been living in an area, develop it, they probably would have built the land and all of that, even though those persons were there squatting according to them. Um, these persons would have invested years, over 20 years, developing that area and all of that under the coalition government.
Yep.
That said area was there was a process of regularization that had started,
Mhm.
and persons were given their house lot numbers and all of that. So the next step would have been to have the documentation and stuff ready for them, because it is 35 families that are being affected and over 50 children. The sad thing about it is that I'm not able to get the ladies currently on because there seems to be having some technical difficulty. I hope that somewhere during the program they can get on to say and express to us what are some of the challenges they are facing as mothers, to deal with their families and to cope, especially during this difficult time. And we're calling on the persons, women's organization, and so forth to take a walk to Cane View and see what is happening and how these women and other interested agencies to see what is being done to these families. It's very sad, when you visit and see a home that persons would have labored, saved their money, built it, and yet still they're being told that they have to remove, and people are coming to break it down and all of that. But this is a situation that really all persons should be involved and be interested in what's happening to those families and how they are affected. It's not only physical, but you have psychological issues going on there, because mentally you have to think about relocating. They're not even thinking about the children who are being cared for by a grandmother or aunt or a family that might be close by, which makes it easy for a family to, if the person have to go out to work or anything, they can simply do that. But when you move me far away from my source of strength, my source of comfort, my source of encouragement, um, that in itself is an issue, and persons don't take that into consideration. Moving on, we during the week we talk about GCOM continuous registration process. The PNCR has taken note of it, and when they look at it, they're encouraging all Guyanese, eligible Guyanese, to get registered and visit the different offices to get on the list. And of course, we need to have a sanitized list, a new list before we have any elections. But the sad thing about it, during the week, I got a call from a resident who said that they were told that persons have to be vaccinated, um, so before they can be registered. And our party is calling on them to immediately remove the vaccination requirement for registration. We see this as a process of stymieing people, and affecting people from having their legal right to be registered. And when the time comes for vote, it is not something that is acceptable. So when I received the call, I started to investigate as to if this is a requirement that persons must be vaccinated before they are allowed to be registered. In my mind, and Comrade Philadelphia, you can share on this too, this is blatant craziness. Because imagine you're telling persons that they have to be vaccinated before they can be registered. And you have removed all the curfew when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to dealing with
Mm-hmm.
COVID. Persons are allowed to go to their social events unhindered without a vaccination card. And something that is very critical and important for young people to have their ID cards, their form of identification. for persons to be able to be given the opportunity when the time comes to vote, you have decided that persons will be denied this opportunity to be registered. What are your thoughts on this, Comrade Philadelphia?
Flubes, honorable member, we are dealing with a cabal that cares only about themselves. And that's first for us to understand. It's nothing new. They care less about the citizens of this country. And so if you're saying to me that there will be continuous registration and you're asking all eligible persons to be registered so that they can exercise their constitutional right as a citizen when that time comes to vote, is good. But then you're saying to me, if you don't have a vaccine card to show that you are vaccinated, don't come. So on one hand, they're giving you a plate with food to eat. And on the other hand, they're throwing it in the bin. This doesn't make any sense. None whatsoever. On the other hand, what I need to make public, the coalition would have had a process of registration when the chairman of GCOM, Justice Claudette Singh, halted that process. From the information I received, that period of registration, all those persons that would have been registered in that time and their names may have been added to the list, those names will be taken off. So that process is null and void and wasted. It is saying to me, therefore, only this cabal believe that they have the right to do and to carry out constitutional mandates and duties. No other administration has the responsibility or the right for that. And it carries me back to what you said before. Those persons that are living there in Caneview, the coalition would have put system in place to commence regularization and to grant those persons documentation for the land in which they occupy. But the PPP come into government and they rescind that because they have no respect. They have no respect. No, because of how they operate, their modus operandi, it's nothing strange that they're doing this. I would have learned of, and I'm seeing it. They have no respect for the citizens of this country. All they want is dominance. Power, power, power. P, P, P. They concern nothing about who can go to get registered. They don't want to ensure that the Guyanese register because you know why? They put a system in place where they're saying that you will be registered to receive a birth certificate where you will not go through any form of scrutiny, but somebody that is considered a well-standing person in society can verify you, and so you will receive your birth certificate so that you get registered. Now, with that arrangement, they know exactly how they're going to do what they want to do. So they don't concern about the real persons and those learners, those children, those citizens who will attain the age of 15 or 14 in keeping with so that they can be registered. They have no time with that. They want to tell the international community that arrangement has been made for them to be registered and they did not get themselves vaccinated. So we don't have an issue. We are not responsible for them not being on the list. They are responsible. And that's the harsh reality.
That's so true. And Comrade Philadelphia, I look at it as a position where this vaccination, we know that the vaccination process was introduced to help people to be protected against COVID. But apparently, this vaccination is now being used to deprive people of their legitimate rights. Their legitimate rights is not being used for the right purpose
Yep.
because
Yep.
persons are vaccinated and still get COVID. You're telling me that if I don't have a vaccination card, I cannot be registered. What tells me that even if I get a vaccination card and turn up at the registration site, that I wouldn't get COVID? There's nothing there to tell you that. So they're using this whole vaccination thing to deprive people of their rights. I was even surprised when I went to the bank to conduct a business the other day, and the person was saying that if you don't have two vaccines on the
Yes.
card,
Yes.
you're not allowed entry into the bank. And I'm saying then we shouldn't have no money in the bank. Because if we got to go through all of this to get, when they put the money in the bank, I'm quite sure they had all these things. Now you got all these systems, and you need to put an alternative arrangement for persons to access their finance. I think it's crazy. And so this administration is using this vaccination thing, in my opinion, to stymie the Guyanese people from enjoying their basic rights and to be registered so that you'll be eligible to vote, and to be registered so that you will be able to have some form of identification so that you can go out and do your business. It's important. And so we continue to call on them to remove this foolishness, because you are depriving people of their basic rights. That's a right. You have a right to get registered so that you can have your identification card. When you have all these things that they're saying, that you can't enter here, you can't do this, you can't do that because of whatever, um, that is where you will have the problem. And persons are unable to go and conduct their legitimate business, and that will affect all the processes. And we continue to call on them, remove this. And also, we want to see a new list for voters, because we don't want persons to end up with a list that is even more bloated with persons who should not be there. And that is something that is very, very critical at this time, for persons to understand that this is something Guyanese people also have to stand up and speak out against. Turn up at the registration site. Turn up at the site and your numbers to be registered. You must be registered. This is total madness. I couldn't believe when I got a call from the citizen that this was actually happening. But then as you get down to it, you recognize that, yes, this is what they're doing. So instead of using the vaccination to encourage people, encourage residents to protect themselves during this pandemic, you're using it now as a tool to deprive people of their basic rights. And it is a very sad situation. And come at Philadelphia, so it appears like Guyana doesn't have COVID now. With all that is happening, curfew removed. You see people going out without their face masks. You see people grouping up and hanging out royally. You see pronouncement being made about school being completely open with everybody there. You already have issues with just having persons there on rotational business. You hardly get any proper updates when it comes to COVID. So I'm wondering, and like many others, what really is going on? Is there COVID in Guyana? With all that is happening, at least all the steps that are being taken so far tells us that, you know what, this thing ain't really happening. That's how it appears. But yet still, Comrade Philadelphia, your basic right to be registered so that you be eligible to get your ID card and all of that is being taken away from you. Your right to go and do your transactions is being taken away from you. But yet say we have persons who are together, liming together, partying together, hanging out in clubs. They're not vaccinated, many of them. They don't have on a face mask. So we're really telling the Guyanese people, come on, we need to get this administration really need to get the act together and stop depriving people of their basic human rights. And again, I want to call on Guyanese, once you're 14 years and older and you don't have an ID card, turn up to be registered. Our continuous registration is ongoing. I will continue to post updates like my other MPs that about what is happening. All right, we want to pause a little. I think I have my two guests in the show now. Could you bring them in for me, operator? It's okay. Bring them in. They're having some difficulty. Good morning, Chevon and Roxanne. Good morning. I don't know if they're not having the audio. We can work with them even if they don't have on the camera. Chevon, good morning. Are you hearing me? All right. We are still trying to get them. They're on, but I think they're having some issues with the audio. So the operator will try to get them to come in so we can hear from these women directly. Come at Philadelphia, we're in the school system. And we know that there's a hot topic and discussion on about hairstyles and what is happening in the school system. I know when you look at some of the school rules that exist in our schools, our public schools, they stipulate hairstyles for boys, hairstyle for girls, and all of that. And some of them have rules that if you don't meet this requirement, children are being sent home and all of that. I know you're at the lower level, so I don't know if your rules, if there are rules in your level, and what are your thoughts on that?
Honorable member, all institutions and or organizations are governed by rule,
Mm-hmm.
which are there to ensure order.
Mm-hmm.
But the big question is, there's a survey now, which is for parents, teachers, and students. And if my memory serves me correct, the survey is basically review of school rules. And I want to start by saying there's no rule at the level of the Ministry of Education governing hairstyle to begin with. So how can you review school rule, review hairstyle rule at the level of the Ministry of Education when there has been no rule to commence such discussion? Now, various institutions have various rules. The rule governing hairstyle at mine is pretty simple. It did not dictate and or specify. Let me say your hair must be combed or plait in two. Your hair must be neatly braided and such like. But it says that your hair must be neatly combed and with green ribbon bow. For the male, your hair must be cut neatly, and of course, if it's long, the boys that wear long hair, it must be plaited neatly, all right? But then when
Mm-hmm.
you think about that, are we thinking inclusion? Are we thinking about the Rastafarians? Are we thinking about the girls with hijabs? You know, and these kind of thing. And so when we talk about hairstyle, we must understand the term that says inclusion. All right. And like I
Yeah.
commence by saying, every institution has their peculiar rule. My daughter attended a senior secondary school, and what she said, your hairstyle should not be extreme. You should be
Mm-hmm.
with two, your hair should be in two. All right. If you braid it, it should be simple. You shouldn't have weave, and these kind of things. But like I said, every institution has its peculiar rule, but the Ministry of Education has not provided the institution with these are the rules the ministry expect you to follow. So for them to come now to say review, for me, is madness.
Yes, I so agree with you. You know, you said it right. I was wondering when I saw the survey being done, um, what really are they hoping to achieve when we know that each institution got its own philosophy, the rules and the culture when it comes to what's happening in that environment. And I was thinking, I was wondering, why is it that we are starting there and not have consultations or meetings at the different levels of the school where you have the parents and the students there looking at the rules and reviewing them, because we know that some of these things based on their school culture or the history of the school, it would have influenced some of the rules or that were made then. And we know that we're living in a changing time where globalization is real. Persons are able to communicate with each other with this internet age. You're able to see, you're able to understand, you're able to communicate more effectively and widely. And so you would find that, you know, persons might see something and yes, they might want to adapt it and all of that, but it may not be relevant at that time to their society. So my in my mind, I was saying, I wonder what really are they trying to achieve? And then this morning I thought of it again. Imagine me being a parent, filling up the survey as a parent, then filling up a survey as a teacher, and then filling up the survey as a student. Do you think you would actually get the true reflection of what you expect from something like that? I don't know if thoughts were given into such, but I also must say that I really enjoy looking at my students have their hair worn in a manner that they feel very comfortable and confident that they can walk around. Um, I also deal with a private school, and I love they have a very simple rule: your hair must be neat and no color. So however you comb it, that's okay, but it must be neat and you don't have any color inside it but your own hair color. These are things that we will continue to see happening, and I would want to see what would be the end results of this, because like you said, Maureen, at the ministry level there was never nothing given out directly to schools to say that this is what they expect. So each school, based on their philosophy, based on their culture, would have come up with their rules so that you can have a, I think it's also a form of identity distinction, that if you attend this particular institution, you know that this person is from this school or that school, because you'd recognize that the students there usually dress or carry themselves in a particular way. And yes, rules are important, but also we want to see persons review. We're waiting to see what they will come up with, but I still believe that this should be done at the school level, where you have the parents and the students and the teachers there at the school and giving their input. It even brings me to when I was a student at the Sir Potter College of Education, when we used to wear the brown and white uniform. And I recall when the uniform was changed, I was a part of the student council at CPC. And I remembered we were a part of the process where we had the discussions and consultation on the change of that uniform. And so I would have liked to see that, where you have more consultation, discussion with the people of the different institutions when it comes to that, because you still have to take into consideration culture, people's rights. You know, the children have rights too. The people have rights. You can't just walk on them, but you should be able to have this kind of dialogue where you can bring that out. Um, I don't know if the guests, operators, the guests ready to come on, or are we still having problems? All right, we're not able to get them in, but I'm quite sure um, during the week, or if when I'm finished here, I can go and get um, these women to bring their story to the world and let people understand what is it that they are going through and how challenged they are. All right, so Carmen Philadelphia, in bringing our show up to a wrap this morning, would you like to give any closing remarks or thoughts to our people? And yes, of course, you must say something special to our ladies as we continue to represent them.
As we get into and celebrate International Women's Day, which was observed and celebrated on the 8th of March, I want to remind all our women folk that every day we should celebrate ourselves.
Yes.
Every day we should celebrate ourselves. We should make it our priority or our agenda to ensure that we do something that shows that we are celebrating ourselves, regardless of how small it may be. And let us ensure that we look out for those persons, be gatekeepers, lift our voices, speak up and speak out against abuse. And of course, this year we observe International Women's Day with a term, a word I will use, break the bias.
Yes.
I would want to say to you, while we ponder on that word, if we can understand its trueness and to recognize whether or not the administration has been doing or has done anything to break the bias. We recognize a female member of parliament was physically assaulted by a sitting minister. And then we had the most senior member of parliament, the female Honorable Gail Teixeira, did not speak up and did not speak out against, but rather that minister was given the umbrella to cover him with. We had another situation where a sitting minister of parliament referred to a sitting female member of parliament during a parliamentary debate, consideration of the estimate, where he said to her, a dildo you can get, dildo you need. And once again, no voice was lifted against what was said, but rather an umbrella was given to that minister to shelter him. And so while we ponder on those two words, break the bias, let us say to ourselves and challenge ourselves to break those biases, not just utterances, but we live them. We walk what we talk. We live what we speak. And so I challenge you to ensure, to put system in place that every day International Women's Day is celebrated in your life, in your family life, in your place of employ, in your place of congregation, whether it's a religious basis or a NGO or whatever. But ensure that you put system in place that those two words, break the biases, are realized. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Philadelphia, for being a strong woman and waking up this morning to join me on my program so that we can continue to interact with our people. To my viewers, I want to thank you for tuning in, and I do look forward for future engagement with you. Let us, yes, continue to speak out, stand up, and represent as a woman. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.